When Princess Diana passed away, the world felt a deep silence. People were heartbroken, but there were also many secrets hidden behind the palace doors. For years, whispers of lies, betrayal, and hurt stayed locked away, kept hidden by royal smiles and formal actions. But now, someone who used to be very close to King Charles has stepped forward. His best friend, who was once trusted, is now sharing stories that were never meant to be told. What really happened after Diana's tragic death? What truths have been kept in the shadows all this time? And why are they finally coming out now? These stories might be more shocking than anyone ever imagined. The truth is finally being revealed, and it's far darker than anyone expected. The Friend speaks. Explosive revelations. Imagine someone very close to King Charles, someone who knows him better than most people. This person has spent years by his side, seeing his private moments and hearing things no one else would. Let's call him Mark, a longtime friend and trusted advisor to Charles. Mark was not just a casual acquaintance. He was like a brother to the prince. They met when they were young, went to school together, and stayed connected through thick and thin. Mark was often the sounding board for Charles, the person Charles turned to when things got tough. Now, after all these years of silence, Mark has finally opened up. What he says is shocking. It changes the way we look at what happened after Princess Diana's tragic death. According to Mark, Charles's feelings about Diana's death were complicated. You might expect sadness or heartbreak, and Charles surely felt those. But Mark says there was something else mixed in too. He claims that Charles had moments of relief. Why? Because Diana's popularity had become a problem for him. Mark shared some private conversations he had with Charles shortly after Diana died. He said Charles was deeply worried, not just about his own feelings, but about the future. He was afraid Diana's enormous popularity would overshadow the royal family forever. Mark told me that Charles once said something very chilling. He said, "She would have destroyed everything." That's a powerful sentence, isn't it? It sounds like Charles felt Diana was a threat, not just to him, but to the whole monarchy. But there's more. Mark claims he saw some personal notes, diary entries, or private letters that Charles wrote in the weeks after Diana's death. These notes showed a man wrestling with anger and fear. Charles worried that Diana's legacy would harm the royal family's reputation. He felt the public was more in love with Diana than with him or the monarchy. This made him feel desperate. Mark says Charles talked about the need to change how the story was told, to shift public opinion. And that's exactly what happened. According to Mark, there was a secret plan to protect Charles's image. The palace worked hard to change the narrative. Slowly, they began showing Charles in a better light. They also started promoting Camilla, Charles's longtime companion. This was a big shift because before Diana's death, Camilla was seen as a villain by many. The palace wanted people to accept her as the future queen. And Mark believes this was all part of Charles's plan to protect his place and ensure the monarchy's survival. Mark says the palace's efforts were not just about PR. They were about survival. The royal family had to rebuild its image, and Charles was at the center of this. This means a lot of things we thought we knew about what happened after Diana's death might need to be reconsidered. The revenge, what happened after Diana's death. Now let's talk about what Mark calls the revenge after Diana's death. This is not revenge in the usual sense, like hurting someone physically or with words. It was a quiet, strategic revenge. It was about power, control, and protecting the royal family at all costs. First, the story about Camilla. Remember how she was once hated by the public? The woman who many blamed for breaking up Charles and Diana's marriage? After Diana's death, the palace worked hard to soften her image. Slowly but surely, people started to see Camilla in a different light. She was introduced to the public more often. The media coverage changed. Instead of being the other woman, she became the woman Charles loved and planned to marry. And now, Camilla is queen consort. This change didn't happen by accident. Mark says Charles and the palace carefully rewrote the story to make Camilla acceptable. It was part of their plan to heal the monarchy's wounds and secure Charles's position on the throne. But there was more to this plan. Mark claims that anyone who was loyal to Diana faced harsh consequences. People who supported Diana, who spoke kindly of her, or who tried to keep her memory alive, were quietly pushed aside. They were cut off from royal circles, ignored by the media, or even pressured to stay silent. Mark calls this a form of revenge. Revenge for the pain and trouble Diana caused Charles and the royal family while she was alive. It was a way of taking back control. Some journalists who were sympathetic to Diana lost their access to royal events. Some of Diana's close friends found doors closing in their faces. Even charities Diana cared about reportedly had their connections weakened. Mark paints a picture of a palace that wasn't just mourning Diana, but was actively working to erase her influence. He says Charles saw Diana's legacy as a threat that had to be contained. To survive, Charles needed to make sure that Diana's memory didn't overshadow him or the monarchy. It's a heavy claim, but if true, it explains a lot about why the royal family has sometimes seemed distant or cold when it comes to talking about Diana. It also explains why Charles's image has been carefully managed for so long. Putting the pieces together. Truth or conspiracy? So, how do we make sense of all this? Do these claims sound believable? Or are they just another wild story made up to attract attention? First, think about what we already know about Charles. Over the years, he has often seemed reserved, careful, and very aware of his role. He has worked hard to rebuild his image, especially after his marriage ended. Camilla's rise in public acceptance didn't happen overnight. It was slow and deliberate. That fits with Mark's claim about a planned PR campaign. Also, Charles has been known to be protective of the monarchy. He has a deep sense of duty to keep the royal family strong, even if it means making tough decisions. So the idea that he would try to manage the fallout from Diana's death carefully isn't far-fetched. On the other hand, we have to ask, who is Mark? Is he truly a reliable source? Could he have a motive to tell this story now? Maybe he feels hurt or betrayed. Maybe he wants attention or money. It's important to keep that in mind. But even if Mark's account isn't 100% true, it opens the door to a bigger question. What really happened behind the palace walls after Diana's death? We know the royal family was under huge pressure. They faced a public crisis like never before. They needed to adapt and survive. If Mark is telling the truth, it means the monarchy made some hard choices, possibly at the cost of Diana's memory. It means Charles was not just a grieving husband, but a man trying to protect his future and the future of the institution. If Mark's story is false or exaggerated, why tell it now? Perhaps someone wants to stir up controversy. Or maybe it's a way to challenge the official story, to keep the conversation about Diana alive. Either way, these revelations make us think differently about what we know. They remind us that behind every public story, there are hidden truths and complicated feelings. They ask us to look beyond the headlines and wonder what really goes on behind palace doors. The silence is broken, and the truth is finally out.
She was the villain. She was the third person in the marriage. She needed to rehabilitate her image.
In an unprecedented act of royal transparency, King Charles III has stunned the world with revelations about his relationship with Queen Camilla that rewrite decades of carefully managed royal narrative. At 76, marking 3 years on the throne and facing health challenges that have prompted deep reflection, the monarch has chosen to speak with extraordinary candor about the most scrutinized romance in modern royal history. This remarkable disclosure comes as the king contemplates his legacy and the historical record he will leave behind. Let us explore the profound implications of this royal confession that has captivated global attention. The significance of this moment cannot be overstated. For half a century, the relationship between Charles and Camilla has been dissected, criticized, reluctantly accepted, and finally normalized through careful image management and the passage of time. The official narrative, a friendship that briefly crossed boundaries but was ultimately set aside for years before being respectably rekindled after 2 failed marriages, has become the accepted history. Until now, that is. Why now? Why at 76? Royal insiders suggest the king's recent health concerns have prompted an existential reckoning. His Majesty has become increasingly reflective about how history will remember him, reveals one palace source. There's a growing desire to set certain records straight while he still can. This impulse for historical accuracy apparently outweighed the traditional royal preference for dignified silence, resulting in revelations that many close to the palace never expected to hear in his lifetime. The king's disclosures center on the true timeline and nature of his relationship with Camilla, a relationship far more enduring and central to his life than the public has ever been told. According to those familiar with his account, Charles and Camilla never truly separated during his marriage to Diana, maintaining emotional intimacy even during periods of physical separation. "There was never a time when she wasn't the central relationship in my life," the king reportedly acknowledged. The notion that we completely parted ways before reconnecting decades later simply isn't accurate. This extraordinary admission reshapes our understanding of the royal narrative throughout the 1980s and 1990s. The much publicized efforts to save the Wales marriage, Diana's famous reference to 3 people in this marriage, the carefully stage-managed rehabilitation of Camilla's public image, all take on new dimensions when viewed through the prism of this confession. For William and Catherine, the Prince and Princess of Wales, these revelations create complex new territory to navigate. William has spent decades constructing a careful relationship with Camilla while honoring his mother's memory. Sources close to the heir indicate he was made aware of his father's intentions before the public disclosure, though his private response remains closely guarded. William understands his father's desire for historical accuracy, suggests one royal observer, but the personal implications are inevitably challenging. Prince Harry's position appears more complicated still. His memoir contained criticism of Camilla's role in the family drama, suggesting a less reconciled perspective than the palace has portrayed. The king's confession potentially validates some of Harry's narrative, while challenging other aspects. Royal watchers note that this moment could either widen the rift between father and younger son, or possibly create space for a more authentic relationship based on shared recognition of difficult truths. For Camilla herself, this revelation represents both vindication and vulnerability. Her journey from vilified other woman to respected queen has been extraordinary by any measure. The king's confession acknowledges her central place in his life, while potentially reigniting criticism of their choices during the Diana years. Those close to the queen suggest she supported Charles's decision to speak more openly, believing that historical accuracy ultimately serves their legacy better than comfortable myths. The palace's approach to managing this disclosure has been carefully calibrated. Rather than a formal announcement or interview, the information emerged through authorized conversations with trusted royal correspondents, allowing the palace to shape the narrative while maintaining some royal distance from the revelations. This strategy reflects the monarchy's centuries-old talent for controlled adaptation to changing circumstances. Public reaction has been predictably divided. For many who lived through the War of the Waleses in real time, this confirmation of what they long suspected feels like vindication after years of being told they misunderstood the situation. For others, particularly those who revere Diana's memory, the king's candor has reopened painful wounds. Social media has exploded with competing hashtags as the public once again takes sides in a royal drama that has spanned generations. What makes the king's disclosure particularly significant is its deviation from the Windsor playbook of strategic silence on personal matters. Elizabeth II's remarkable 70-year reign was defined by her disciplined refusal to comment on private affairs. Charles's more transparent approach signals a potentially different relationship with history and the public, one that acknowledges human complexity, even within constitutional monarchy. The timing, in the 3rd year of his reign, suggests a king increasingly comfortable with his role and legacy. After the long apprenticeship as Prince of Wales, Charles appears to have gained the confidence to shape his own narrative, rather than allowing others to define it for him. There's a sense that the king has decided that authenticity, however complicated, serves the monarchy better in the long run than carefully constructed fiction, notes one royal historian. For the monarchy as an institution, this moment represents both risk and opportunity. The traditional approach has prioritized mystique and dignity over transparency. Charles's more candid style could either humanize the institution for modern sensibilities or diminish the special aura that separates monarchy from mere celebrity. Constitutional experts suggest this represents the most significant shift in royal communication strategy since the televising of the coronation in 1953. The legal implications are minimal, but the historical significance is profound. Future biographers, historians, and cultural analysts will need to reassess decades of royal reporting in light of these revelations. Books will be rewritten, documentaries updated, and the entire timeline of modern royal history reconsidered. This is perhaps the most significant royal reframing in living memory, says one academic specialist in monarchy studies. For the generation that grew up with Charles and Diana as the fairy tale couple of the 1980s, this confession requires a complex emotional adjustment. The realization that the narrative was even more complicated than previously acknowledged challenges, long-held assumptions, and emotional investments. Cultural commentators note that our collective response to this revelation says as much about our need for simplified narratives as it does about the royals themselves. What does this mean for the future of the monarchy? The institution has always balanced tradition with necessary evolution. Charles's more transparent approach potentially signals a monarchy more willing to acknowledge human complexity, rather than relying on fairy tale narratives that inevitably crack under scrutiny. This may better position the institution for longevity in an age of unprecedented access to information. As the dust settles on this extraordinary confession, attention inevitably turns to what other aspects of royal history might be re-examined during this reign. Will there be further revelations about other chapters of Windsor history? Has Charles opened a door that future monarchs will feel compelled to walk through? The precedent set here may influence royal communication for generations to come. The most poignant aspect of the king's disclosure is the picture it paints of a man who has lived much of his life caught between personal desire and public duty. Though born to immense privilege, Charles has navigated constraints that few would envy. His confession reveals someone who has spent decades balancing competing loyalties to the woman he loved, to his position, to his children, and to an institution bigger than any individual. For Camilla, the confession underscores the extraordinary resilience she has demonstrated throughout decades of public criticism. To have maintained a central role in Charles's life through years when she was cast as a national villain speaks to remarkable strength of character. Her journey from secret companion to queen represents one of the most remarkable image rehabilitations in modern public life. The relationship between Charles and Camilla now enters its next chapter, stripped of the comfortable fictions that have shaped its public presentation for decades. There is vulnerability in this new transparency, but also the potential for a more authentic connection with the public. The king appears to have concluded that he would rather be remembered for complicated truths than comfortable myths, notes one royal commentator. As this extraordinary disclosure continues to reverberate through public consciousness, one truth remains self-evident. The story of Charles and Camilla continues to fascinate global audiences, not just because it involves crowns and palaces, but because it speaks to universal themes of love, commitment, societal expectations, and the complex choices we all make in balancing personal happiness with responsibility to others. For Charles, now standing in his truth at 76, the confession appears to represent a kind of liberation, the freedom that comes from no longer maintaining narratives that don't align with lived experience. For the monarchy, it represents another moment of adaptation in an institution that has survived precisely because of its capacity to evolve while maintaining core traditions. This royal revelation reminds us that behind the pageantry and protocol, the Windsor story is ultimately a human one, filled with the same complexities, compromises, joys, and sorrows that mark all our lives, albeit played out on an incomparably public stage. The king's confession humanizes an institution often criticized for its remoteness, offering a glimpse of the person behind the crown. In royal history, this will likely be remembered as the moment when Charles III definitively established the distinctive character of his reign, one marked by greater transparency, willingness to acknowledge complexity, and recognition that modern monarchy cannot rely on the unquestioning deference of previous eras. By choosing truth over mythology, however uncomfortable, Charles may have strengthened the monarchy's prospects in an age where authenticity is increasingly valued over perfection. Whatever comes next, this extraordinary confession ensures that when history judges the relationship between Charles and Camilla, it will do so with a more complete understanding of its enduring significance to both participants. After decades of speculation, judgment, and carefully managed narrative, the king has finally claimed authorship of his own story. For better or worse, Charles III will be remembered as the monarch who chose transparency over tradition when it came to matters of the heart. And in doing so, he may have written the first chapter in a new relationship between the British monarchy and the public it serves, one based on human reality rather than royal fairy tales,
Buckingham Palace, which has announced that the king has been diagnosed with cancer.
Can't mimic voices for love or money. I'm completely hopeless at it. I was the only one, so I think she carved her own role.
Dark clouds have gathered over the royal family. Queen Camilla, always strong in front of the world, has been seen breaking down in tears after receiving shocking news. A life sentence that changes everything. The palace halls, once filled with power and control, now feel heavy with fear and uncertainty. At the same time, another heartbreaking update shakes the kingdom. King Charles, already fighting a tough battle with cancer, faces a new twist in his health that no one saw coming. The weight of it all is too much to bear, and the royal family is struggling to hold things together. What led to this moment? What does this mean for the future of the monarchy? The truth behind these shocking events is more heartbreaking than anyone could have imagined. Queen Camilla's alleged life sentence. The phrase life sentence is usually something we hear in courtrooms. It's a punishment for serious crimes, something that keeps people behind bars forever. So, when people say Queen Camilla has been given a life sentence, what does that actually mean? The truth is, Camilla is not in any legal trouble. She has not been sent to prison. Instead, this so-called sentence seems to be a metaphor. Many believe that Camilla is now trapped in a role she never truly wanted, facing endless criticism and public scrutiny. She has stepped into a position that comes with huge responsibilities, and it's weighing heavily on her. The rumors started spreading on social media and in tabloid newspapers. Some headlines made it sound like she was facing actual jail time. Others exaggerated her emotional state, claiming she was in tears and unable to handle the pressure. But where did this all come from? It seems that many of these stories were fueled by the ongoing debates about her place in the royal family. Some people still see her as the other woman from the past. Even though years have passed since Princess Diana's tragic death, the shadow of that history still lingers. Some tabloids thrive on this controversy, pushing dramatic headlines to attract attention. So, is Queen Camilla really serving a life sentence? Not in a legal sense, but emotionally, she might feel like she is stuck in a role that comes with endless criticism and expectations. Why Queen Camilla might be struggling emotionally. Camilla's journey into the royal family has never been smooth. From the very beginning, she was labeled as the woman who came between Prince Charles and Princess Diana. The world loved Diana. She was the people's princess, known for her kindness and warmth. So, when Charles's affair with Camilla became public, it was like a betrayal to many. Even after Diana's passing, Camilla was seen as a controversial figure. When she finally married Charles in 2005, many people still refused to accept her. And now, as queen consort, the pressure has only increased. Public perception of Camilla remains divided. Some have warmed up to her over the years, seeing her as a dedicated wife to Charles. But others still view her with suspicion. The comparison to Diana never goes away, and that can be emotionally draining. Imagine stepping into a role where millions of people constantly judge you, compare you, and question your worth. That's the reality Camilla faces every day. And then, there's the pressure within the royal family itself. Prince William and Prince Harry were deeply affected by their mother's story. While William has remained mostly respectful towards Camilla, Harry has been more outspoken. In his book Spare, Harry made it clear that he saw Camilla as someone who played the long game to secure her place in the royal family. These tensions, whether spoken or unspoken, add to the emotional burden Camilla carries. Now, with King Charles battling cancer, things have become even more complicated. She is expected to be strong, supportive, and ready to step up in his absence. But behind the scenes, she may be struggling with the weight of it all. Camilla's role in the monarchy becoming queen consort was never part of Camilla's original plan. When she married Charles, there were talks that she would only be called princess consort out of respect for Diana's legacy. But over time, Charles made it clear that he wanted Camilla to have full recognition as his queen. When Queen Elizabeth passed away in 2022, Camilla officially stepped into the role. But with that title came massive responsibilities. She is now expected to support the king, attend royal events, and uphold the image of the monarchy. Her transition from Duchess of Cornwall to queen consort was not an easy one. People still criticized her, questioned her worth, and compared her to Diana. She had to work extra hard to prove herself. Even now, she faces backlash whenever she makes a public appearance. Some believe she is undeserving of the title, while others feel she has earned her place. The question remains, does she feel trapped in this role? Some insiders suggest that Camilla never truly wanted this level of attention. She was comfortable staying in the background, but now, with Charles's health crisis, she is being pushed into a more central position. And with every move she makes, the world is watching. King Charles's cancer update. Just when the world was adjusting to the idea of Charles as king, shocking news came out. He had been diagnosed with cancer. The announcement was made by Buckingham Palace, but they did not reveal what type of cancer he has. All they confirmed was that it is not prostate cancer. The news left many people concerned. Charles is in his mid-70s, and health issues at this stage can be serious. He has already started treatment, but the palace has kept many details private. Medical experts have weighed in, saying that early detection is key, but without more information, it's hard to predict his recovery. The big question now is, how is the royal family handling this? How the royal family is reacting? Camilla has been by Charles's side, attending to royal duties while also supporting him behind closed doors. Some reports suggest that she has been under immense stress, trying to balance everything at once. Prince William has stepped up in his father's absence. As the next in line for the throne, he has taken on more responsibilities. His focus is not just on his father's health, but also on keeping the monarchy stable. And what about Prince Harry? His reaction has been one of the biggest talking points. After years of tension with the royal family, he made a quick trip to the UK after hearing about his father's condition. But the visit was short, and there was no sign of deep reconciliation. Many wonder if this crisis will bring the family closer, or if the distance will remain. The future of the monarchy, amidst health concerns. If King Charles's health worsens, what happens next? The answer is clear. Prince William is next in line, but is he ready? Many believe he has been preparing for this role his entire life. He is respected, responsible, and has the public's support. But stepping into the role of king is not easy, and with his father's illness, he may have to take on more leadership sooner than expected. The monarchy itself is at a crossroads. Public opinion about the royal family is changing. Some people still love and support them, while others question whether the monarchy should continue at all. Charles' illness and Camilla's struggles only add to the uncertainty. For now, the world watches and waits. Will Charles recover? Will Camilla find strength in her role? And will this crisis bring the family together or tear them apart? The royal family is facing one of its darkest moments, and the future has never felt more uncertain. With Queen Camilla in tears and King Charles's health hanging in the balance, the world is left wondering, what happens next? As more details unfold, this story is far from over. Stay tuned for the latest updates, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, so you never miss a breaking royal update. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.
Duke and Duchess of Sussex were welcomed by a crowd of well-wishers inside the grounds of Windsor Castle.
The Queen stood still, dressed in her usual bright colors. The cameras were watching. People nearby were quiet. Then, she turned her head slightly and said something. Just a few small words. No one heard her, but everyone saw her lips move. It happened so fast. Ever since that day, people have been wondering, what did she say? For years it was a mystery. Some guessed, some made up stories, but no one really knew the truth. The video was watched again and again. Still, the words stayed hidden. Now, after all this time, a skilled lip reader, someone who can understand what people are saying just by watching their lips, has finally figured it out. The secret words the Queen said that day are no longer a secret, and what she said might surprise you. Context: setting the scene. It was one of the most watched royal events of the decade, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's wedding on May 19, 2018. Held at St. George's Chapel in Windsor Castle, the ceremony was broadcast all over the world. Millions of people tuned in, not just in the UK, but from every corner of the globe. The crowd outside the chapel was buzzing. Cameras captured every angle, every expression, every movement. People weren't just watching the wedding, they were watching the royal family. And then, in the middle of all the royal guests arriving and the music playing, a moment happened. A small, quiet moment. One that wasn't supposed to be that important, but somehow became the center of attention. Queen Elizabeth II, sitting in her usual dignified way, leaned slightly to her right and whispered something. Her lips moved just for a second. That was it. Just a few frames on camera. No sound, no microphone, nothing but her lips. But that small moment caught the internet's attention. In the days and weeks after the wedding, people began to share that short clip online. The Queen turning her head, the lips moving. A blink and you'll miss it moment. But this is the internet, and no detail is ever too small. Viewers zoomed in, slowed down the video, looped it, and tried to read her lips. Some were just curious. Others were convinced she was saying something dramatic. Maybe a joke. Maybe a comment about Meghan. Or maybe something more serious. What made it even more interesting is that the Queen rarely shows visible emotion in public. She's known for being measured, composed, and unreadable. So when she moves her lips in a way that looks like a quiet remark, people notice. The video clip started going viral. People made memes about it. TikToks popped up where users pretended to be lip readers, giving their own funny takes. Some said she was criticizing Meghan's dress. Others joked that she was asking about lunch. It became one of those internet mysteries that everyone had a theory about, but no one could confirm. And so the question became, what did the Queen actually say that day? The mystery over the years. Since that wedding, many attempts have been made to figure it out. Journalists reached out to body language experts. YouTubers made breakdown videos. Even news networks like BBC and ITV were asked for the original footage in better resolution. But still, no answer. Some videos claimed she said, "Move over, dear," while others suggested it was more of a comment like, "That was lovely," or "What's next?" The guesses were endless. Some lip readers online tried to decode it, but each came back with a different conclusion. Some even admitted that the angle of the camera made it too difficult to be sure. To make things more confusing, the Queen's mouth only moves very slightly in the video. There's no audio, of course, and her lips barely part. It's one of those moments where you think you see something, but you can't quite be sure. It became a classic case of, did she say that? Or am I just imagining it? In fact, over time, this moment became like the royal version of a conspiracy theory. Forums and comment sections would bring it up again and again. Has anyone finally decoded what she said? Became a repeated question. Some people said we should leave it alone and respect her privacy. Others believed the answer might reveal something deeper about the royal family's mood that day. Despite all the guesses, one thing stayed the same. No one could say with confidence what the Queen said. The mystery stayed unsolved. Until now. Meet the lip reader. After all the failed guesses and contradictions, a professional lip reader finally decided to take a closer look. Not just someone making a funny video for clicks, but a trained expert. Someone who has worked on decoding silent footage for years. Let's call her Sarah Thompson, a placeholder name for now. A British lip-reading specialist who has worked on everything from sports events to courtroom footage and even documentaries. Sarah has over a decade of experience in visual speech recognition. She doesn't rely on guesswork. She uses software, frame-by-frame analysis, and years of training to identify speech through mouth.
1992 is not a year on which I shall look back with undiluted pleasure.
Movements. According to her, lip reading is not just about matching words. It's about understanding the shape of the lips, the rhythm of the speech, and how phonemes, the sounds that make up words, are formed visually. Sarah explains that context is everything. If someone says the word apple versus happy, the mouth moves differently, even if you hear a similar ending. Skilled lip readers are trained to recognize those differences. They don't just watch once, they analyze, they replay, they slow it down, they break it apart syllable by syllable. And most importantly, they know how easy it is to make mistakes, so they work slowly and carefully. She had never commented on the Queen's viral moment before, but after being asked repeatedly, and after finally getting access to higher resolution footage from a documentary archive, she agreed to take a look. Her response? This is not a guess. This is a confirmed interpretation, based on visual phonetics. That got everyone's attention. The revelation. Sarah's analysis began with the original wedding footage. She slowed it down to 1/10 of the original speed. She zoomed in on the Queen's mouth. She also studied other clips of the Queen speaking to compare mouth shapes and speaking patterns. For example, how she pronounces certain vowels, or how her lips move when she says softer consonants like V or F. This is important, because everyone's mouth moves a bit differently, even when saying the same words. Then came the big moment. In the clip, the Queen turns her head gently to the right. Her mouth opens just slightly. Her lips move for about 2 seconds. Then she closes her mouth again. It's subtle, very subtle. But Sarah confirmed the phrase. That was lovely. That's it, just 3 words. Not a secret insult, not a joke, not a royal command. Just a quiet, simple comment. According to Sarah, the Queen likely said it while watching part of the ceremony. Perhaps in response to the choir's performance, or Meghan's entrance, or even the flowers. We'll never know exactly what she was referring to. But the words are clear. That was lovely. Sarah broke it down in her report. The lips come together at the beginning, suggesting a th sound, which rules out any phrase that starts with a hard consonant like B or M. The second word includes a visible W shape, with both lips forming a rounded motion, matching was. The final word ends with the top teeth touching the bottom lip and a visible li movement at the end, fitting lovely. So why was this such a big deal? Because after all the speculation, all the rumors, and all the drama people imagined, it turns out the Queen was just being kind. She was appreciating the moment. She wasn't judging anyone. She wasn't making a sarcastic remark. She was simply enjoying a beautiful day with her family. In a way, that answer made people smile. Some felt silly for thinking it was something bigger. Others were actually moved. The Queen, known for her calm and stoic presence, had taken a moment to quietly say something heartfelt. It also made people reflect on how much we read into silent moments. A tiny whisper, a slight nod, a blink. When it comes to public figures, especially someone like the Queen, we often project our thoughts, our hopes, or our suspicions onto them. But sometimes, the real story is far simpler. Of course, not everyone believed it. Some still insist she said something else. Others think the moment was taken out of context. But for many, the mystery was finally solved. After years of debate, a professional lip reader gave the answer.
It has turned out to be an annus horribilis. I suspect that I'm not alone in thinking it so.
That was lovely. And maybe, just maybe, that's exactly the kind of moment we should be holding on to. And just like that, the mystery is no longer a mystery. The Queen's quiet words, once lost in the noise, now finally heard.
King Charles and Queen Camilla are in Australia for the first visit by a reigning British monarch.
Tonight, Britain's Queen Camilla is missing from remembrance events honoring the country's war dead.
When King Charles and Queen Camilla took the throne, They seemed like a perfect power couple, ready to lead the monarchy into a new era. However, behind their calm image lies a story filled with ambition, hidden motives, and power struggles in the royal family. Palace insiders have been talking about Queen Camilla's growing influence behind the scenes, which has reportedly led to tension with the king himself. How did a once supportive partner become a challenger for power in the palace? Join us as we uncover the surprising, untold details of Queen Camilla's rise to prominence. Camilla and Charles's relationship. Charles and Camilla's story began in the early 1970s, long before either of them imagined the intense public scrutiny they'd face. Charles, then a young prince, met Camilla Shand at a polo match. She was charming, confident, and known for her humor, which Charles found refreshing compared to the formality surrounding him. They shared an instant bond with a natural chemistry that neither could ignore. But as the Prince of Wales, Charles faced family pressures over whom he should choose as a partner. A woman from a suitable background, with a clear reputation and without past relationships, was what the royal family expected. Yet despite these pressures, Charles couldn't seem to let go of Camilla. What happened next would change everything. Charles and Camilla's relationship was strong, but he wasn't free to choose as he wished. Pressured by royal duties and expectations, Charles had to put his role before his personal life. Camilla, aware of the limitations that came with his position, eventually married Andrew Parker Bowles, a British Army officer. Their relationship was now officially over, but Charles couldn't simply move on from the deep connection he felt with her. Despite the ending, they continued to write letters, call each other, and occasionally meet, keeping their bond alive even from a distance. As years passed, Charles remained in contact with Camilla even as he prepared to marry Lady Diana Spencer, a match his family deemed ideal for the future king. However, his feelings for Camilla had not disappeared, and this lingering affection would lead to complications. The marriage to Diana was intended to represent continuity for the monarchy. But with his emotions still tied to Camilla, Charles faced an inner struggle. He was torn between the woman he was expected to be with and the woman he loved. Charles's loyalty to Camilla persisted in secrecy, but its impact on his marriage to Diana became visible. Camilla, though not officially part of his life, was present in his thoughts, creating tension that would eventually break through the public's perception of a fairy tale marriage. The secretive bond between Charles and Camilla cast a shadow that grew over time, leading to public speculation and setting the stage for one of the most controversial relationships in royal history. Their story, though forbidden by tradition, duty, and public opinion, would not stay hidden forever. If you are wondering how it turned out, keep watching. Challenges and controversies over the years. As Charles and Diana's marriage faced increasing struggles, rumors of an affair between Charles and Camilla began to surface. By the late 1980s, the British press had begun covering their relationship, with stories about their closeness gradually taking over headlines. The public was captivated by this scandal, one that involved the future king and the woman who had once been his longtime companion. In 1992, Diana's authorized biography was published, exposing her side of the story and giving voice to the difficulties in her marriage. One of the most painful revelations was Charles's ongoing relationship with Camilla, something Diana had struggled with privately for years. These revelations instantly captured global media attention, and the public's fascination with the love triangle intensified. It was the beginning of a period of intense scrutiny that would affect them all for years. The revelations didn't stop there. In 1993, a private phone conversation between Charles and Camilla, later dubbed Camillagate, was leaked to the press. This tape confirmed the intimate nature of their relationship and threw fuel on the fire. The public, already angry over the affair, found themselves outraged as Charles, the future king, seemed to breach both his marriage vows and the public's trust. The scandal cast doubt on his character and leadership. While Diana was viewed as the victim, Camilla, a relatively private figure until that point, was now vilified by the media. She was quickly branded as the other woman, a label that would stick with her for years. The fallout from the affair also affected Camilla's marriage to Andrew Parker Bowles, which was already under strain. By 1995, the couple's relationship officially ended in divorce, another painful chapter in the public saga. The disintegration of her marriage exposed just how much Charles and Camilla's bond was impacting their personal lives. For Camilla, the affair led to both a public and private cost. She lost her marriage and, by extension, a private life outside the media's reach. With the public's growing interest, the royal family itself began to face more difficult questions. For the British public, these constant revelations led to doubts about the future of the monarchy itself. Charles, bound to inherit the throne, found himself in an increasingly difficult position. His personal choices and relationships had become subjects of national debate, challenging his image as the future king. With each passing year, his suitability as a leader seemed less clear. Camilla, despite her silence, was no longer simply a private individual. She had become a controversial figure, a symbol of the challenges faced by the royal family when tradition collided with personal desires. However, over time, the public perception of Charles and Camilla began to shift. As their story continued to unfold, it revealed how they would, against all odds, seek redemption and attempt to rebuild their relationship with both the public and the royal family. Finding public acceptance. After years of being cast as the villain in the media, Camilla faced an uphill battle for public acceptance. The scandal surrounding her relationship with Charles left many people questioning her intentions, and even her suitability to stand beside the future king. Yet, over time, both she and Charles undertook efforts to reshape public perception. Slowly, they began appearing together more often. Starting with low-profile outings and gradually moving to public events, they were careful not to rush, aware that pushing too fast could only reignite criticism. Their strategy aimed at building acceptance through a genuine, visible bond that felt natural rather than forced. It wasn't an easy process. Even as public displays became more frequent, the shadow of Diana's legacy was ever present. Charles and Camilla's every move was analyzed, and the public remained skeptical. Despite these challenges, Camilla worked quietly to change opinions, often through small gestures. She engaged in charitable work, focusing on causes that were close to her heart, including animal welfare and literacy programs. Over time, her public appearances showed a woman who wasn't chasing fame, but who wanted to support meaningful causes. This approach, though understated, began shifting opinions in her favor. In 2005, Charles and Camilla's relationship took a major step forward when they married in a civil ceremony. This event marked the first time a British monarch-to-be married outside a religious setting, a necessary choice given the circumstances. Although the marriage wasn't celebrated with the same grandeur as other royal weddings, it symbolized a turning point. Many saw it as a respectful step that allowed Charles and Camilla to move forward, closing a painful chapter. With the marriage, Camilla received the title Duchess of Cornwall rather than Princess of Wales, a decision made out of respect for Diana's enduring memory. After the wedding, both Camilla and Charles continued their gradual path toward public acceptance. Camilla took on more royal responsibilities, showing that she was committed to supporting the monarchy and Charles's future reign. Her dedication to charity work and her unassuming demeanor contrasted with the image of a home wrecker painted years earlier. Though acceptance was far from unanimous, a growing number of people began to see her differently. Their path toward redemption wasn't without setbacks, but the couple's patience seemed to work in their favor. Yet even with public opinion softening, new challenges were rising. How would Camilla fare as queen alongside Charles, and would they overcome lingering doubts? Keep watching to find out, preparing for life as queen. With their marriage and gradual acceptance by the public, Camilla and Charles began focusing on the future. As Charles prepared for his role as king, it became clear that Camilla's role would also be significant. Camilla, once seen as an outsider, had to prepare herself for life as the queen consort. Over the years, she attended numerous public events, ceremonies, and diplomatic gatherings, acclimating to the pressures of royal duties. Observers noted her increasing confidence, as well as the comfort she seemed to bring to Charles during challenging public appearances. These moments highlighted her evolution from a controversial figure to a steady support for the future king. Camilla's transition wasn't only about public appearances. She also needed to win the trust of key figures within the royal institution. Many senior members of the monarchy had once opposed her presence, fearing she would disrupt the stability of the family. Camilla worked tirelessly behind the scenes, often engaging with staff, diplomats, and officials, showing her commitment to supporting Charles and the monarchy's future. Her dedication to charity and her diplomatic approach were recognized and respected, with some even calling her a calming presence within the family. Despite her progress, the issue of titles lingered. When Charles eventually ascended the throne, many wondered what title Camilla would take. The title Queen Camilla sparked debate, as some still questioned her place within the monarchy's future. However, as Charles publicly supported her, declaring his desire for her to be known as Queen Consort, the conversation took a new direction. The endorsement by Queen Elizabeth II herself in her later years also helped, sending a strong signal that Camilla had the institution's acceptance at the highest level. Camilla's life as Queen Consort would not only involve supporting Charles, but also embodying the values of the British monarchy. She needed to show that her love for Charles was matched by her commitment to duty. And with growing responsibilities, Camilla faced pressures to meet the high expectations that came with her new role. As public opinion softened, and as she gained further respect within the monarchy, Camilla seemed ready for the role she'd once never imagined would be hers. The journey was far from over. Camilla's past would always be part of her story, but her commitment to her new role showed resilience and adaptability.